Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Alcorn here. Hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be talking about ecological tolerance. The learning objective for today is to describe ecological tolerance, and at the end we're going to work on the skill of identifying the author's claim. So the essential knowledge you should have as a result of listening to this, hopefully, is that ecological tolerance refers to the range of conditions such as temperature, salinity, flow rate, and sunlight that an organism can endure before injury or death results. Spooky. And ecological tolerance can apply to individuals and to species. Let's see where this thing is. Okay. So what is a range of tolerance? It's a range of conditions such as temperature, salinity, or sunlight, so thinking about plants, that an organism can endure before injury or death results. So species and individual organisms both have a range of tolerance for all the different environmental conditions of their habitat. So as a whole, you have an environmental range of tolerance, and then different individuals might vary within that range. Like I get cold really easily, for instance. So example, salmon have a basic range of tolerance for temperature from 6 degrees to 22 degrees Celsius. Some individual salmon have adaptations that give them a range of tolerance that is outside the basic range for the species. Some can survive in a little bit colder conditions. Some can survive in a little bit warmer and be just fine. Not many. So here, this graph shows you different subspecies of salmon, and these are in different populations. I'm going to put the map about where my face is, so move that over. So you've got here, this shows you on the x-axis, you have the different temperatures that they can survive in. In here, it's in Celsius. You have 0 to 25, probably going up to 30 here. And then you have, for this population, they just repeat the axis so that the data can be well organized. And then here on the y-axis, you have aerobic scope, which is a measure of how well they can use oxygen. So as you can see, there's some variations within the subspecies. Even though they're all in the group salmon, you have these subspecies, the Chilco, the early Stewart, etc., that have different ranges within the species. So there is variability. And why is this? This is due to genetic biodiversity. They have different gene pools that they're drawing from. There's different genes and different adaptations in some populations. So some of these, for instance, the gates, here you can see it uses oxygen better when it's colder than the Nechenko here can survive. It can use oxygen pretty well when it's below 15 degrees. Whereas the gates might not do so well when as it gets colder. Might not be as successful and therefore have a lower population. Okay, when organisms are in their range of tolerance and they're using oxygen effectively, that means that they're feeding, they're mating, they're thriving, and therefore the population will be higher. So when you have more genes and more genetic diversity, this makes populations of salmon more resistant to disturbances like global warming. As you can see on the higher end of the range here, as the temperature gets warmer, salmon don't do so well in, say, 25 degrees. But however, different populations, if you look at, kind of compare these two, the Quesnel versus the Weaver, just looking at the blue, the Quesnel does a little bit better as it gets warmer, and so does the early Stewart. So here is a map just to show you, this is from the study that this graph was pulled from. I added this in just to show you Vancouver, and you have the river and the different spots where these different populations are found. So these are salmon, but they're subspecies, they're different populations of salmon. Okay, so there's 3 different zones that you need to think about when you're thinking about range of tolerance. So let's dissect this graph. Okay, you've got pH from 2 acidic, that's too acidic, to 2 alkaline, that's too basic. Remember, acidic is under a pH of 7, alkaline is above a pH of 7, okay? Then you have Goldilocks down here, temperature. This is too cold. And then this is too hot. And then in the middle you have, oh, it's just right, okay? So the first zone is the optimal range. This is here, so you have your preferred niche here. You can see the bell curve is up here, and that's indicating that the number of organisms, which is your y-axis, which is your dependent variable, is high. So in the preferred niche, when the pH is just right, when the temperature is just right, organisms are growing, they're surviving, they're reproducing, they're making babies, so the population is going to be greater, okay? Then you've got the zone of physiological stress. That's kind of what we're living in right now with COVID-19. We're alive, but are we thriving? I don't know. Some people are, some might not be. Those of you who like having a lot of social interaction, being in person with each other, you're probably showing some stress, okay? You might not be growing. We'll leave this next one alone. You might have decreased activity. Okay, when organisms are living in their physiological stress zone here, they actually become infertile. So therefore, you have a lower population, okay? Because if they're not getting enough food to provide the resources that they need to get pregnant and to mate, the population is going to be lower. They're also going to have less activity. If it's really cold, you're not going to be moving around looking for food because that's going to burn more calories than you potentially could be taking in. It's just an example. Then you have the zone of intolerance, and that's where death occurs, okay? Thermal shock, suffocation, if there's not enough oxygen. If you think of the case of eutrophication in the lakes, when the dissolved oxygen level goes down, fish die, okay? You don't have enough food. Let's say there's forest fires. It burns all of the food resources in the area. Guess what? The animals are going to die. Okay. Time to go over some FRQ writing tips. Because FRQs, that's where we get our points. That's where we get our fives, baby. Okay? So on FRQs about human activities or natural events that cause environmental disturbances, always connect this answer to the ecological range of tolerance, okay? If possible, connect it to climate change. So electricity, so here are the human impacts, specific human impacts. Don't just say human impacts. You could say generating electricity, transportation, agriculture, okay? These all reduce CO2, maybe for the first two because of the combustion of fossil fuels. The next one you could say because you're getting rid of trees which sequester carbon and putting in burping and farting cows, which are pumping out methane left and right. They cause climate change and global warming. Okay, global warming shifts temperature outside the range of tolerance. There's your money word. There's the point, okay? You have to say that. Shifts temperatures outside the range of tolerance for many tree species, causing their populations to decline. Okay, so you have outside the range, okay, the cause, global warming is shifting temperature. Okay, the effect, it's outside of the range of tolerance. And here's what happens, causing the population to decline. Or global warming warms the ocean, shifting temperature outside the range of tolerance for many fish species, causing die-offs, death. I don't know why we're so fixated on gloom and doom in this class, sorry. All right, so try to connect a shift in range of tolerance to a specific kind of physiological stress. Suffocation. Okay, don't just say stress, okay? Let's get gory here. Suffocation. Thermal shock. That's when it gets too hot and they die. Lack of water, food, nutrients, oxygen. Okay, if you're talking about eutrophication, you could talk about the lack of dissolved oxygen, so they suffocate. Okay, so here you go. Global warming warms the ocean, shifting temperature outside the range of tolerance for many fish species. And then this is another factoid you need to remember. Put this down, get a tattoo of it. Since global warming increases open temperature and warm water holds less oxygen, this is something we have not talked about yet. Put it down, write it on your arm. Warm water holds less oxygen. Fish may suffocate due to lack of oxygen. So they might suffocate. Why? Due to lack of oxygen. And it's like, miss, it says it right here. It spells it out. No, you need to be specific. You need to tell these people you know what you're talking about. Here's another example. Global warming can increase droughts. I don't know why it says warm there. With increased droughts, rainfall patterns may shift outside the range of tolerance. Notice the theme here. What does it keep saying? Oh, that's right, outside the range of tolerance. For many plant species, without enough rainfall, these species may suffer population decline as their roots are unable to absorb enough water from the soil. See that? So instead of suffocate due to lack of oxygen, roots are unable to absorb enough water, and then they die. Okay, so let's do this practice FRQ. You're going to identify the author's claim. I'm not going to read it out loud for you.